My wife told me to stop controlling her phone, then her smartwatch connected to my car and read her messages out loud while we drove to marriage counseling. Throwaway because friends follow my main. My wife, Talia, and I have been together 8 years, married for 5. We live outside Boise. We have a 4-year-old and a baby who just turned 1. I'm 36, she's 34, and we both work full-time. I do dispatch for a plumbing company. She manages the front end of a grocery store. This started as a dumb argument about phones and turned into me realizing our marriage counseling appointment was not what I thought it was. For context, I'm not one of those people who wants passwords and location sharing and every notification mirrored on my screen. I don't care if my wife watches reality shows I hate or texts her sister about me being annoying. I do care when someone's behavior changes and then they act like noticing it is the problem. Around late summer, she got into running with a group from her store. She'd do early morning runs at a park, then coffee after, and I was genuinely happy she had something that was hers. She bought herself a smartwatch to track runs. She was excited about it. She started closing her rings and talking about pacing, normal stuff. Then the phone thing started. She'd flip her phone face down every time I came into the room. She'd stop typing mid-sentence. She'd go to the bathroom and take the phone even if she was just washing her hands. She started charging her phone on her side of the bed when we always charged on the dresser. I didn't accuse her of anything. I asked if she was okay. She said she was tired. I asked if work was stressing her out. She said it was fine. I asked if I did something. She said no, but she started saying I had a tone when I asked questions, and she would say it like it was a fact. One night we were on the couch and her phone buzzed. She didn't pick it up, but she looked at her watch and smiled. Not a big smile, just that small private one. And I saw it, and she saw me see it. I said, "Who's that?" She said, "You're not my dad." And I said, "I didn't say you couldn't text people. I asked who it was because you smiled." And she said, "You're always trying to monitor me. You are controlling." That word stuck because it didn't match our life. I'm not perfect. I get stressed. I can be quiet when I'm upset, but controlling is not who I am. And she knows that. The next day, she told me she booked marriage counseling. She said she didn't want to end up resenting me. She said she wanted a neutral person to help us communicate. I agreed because I thought we were in the normal married couple mess of exhaustion, money, kids, and both of us feeling unseen. For about 2 weeks after that, she was almost cheerful, like she had decided the problem, had a solution, and now she was just waiting for the appointment. And I felt relief. I kept telling myself it was good that she cared enough to schedule it. Then the week of the appointment, she started picking fights in a specific way. It was always about my control. If I asked what time she'd be home, control. If I asked if she could grab diapers on the way back, control. If I asked why she was late, control. I finally said, "I'm not going to apologize for asking basic questions when we share kids in a house." And she said, "See, you don't even hear yourself." The night before counseling, she was in the kitchen on her phone, and I walked in and she locked it immediately, and I didn't even speak. I just looked at her and she said, "Stop. You're not entitled to my phone." And I said, "You're right. I'm not. I'm entitled to honesty." She told me, "If you show up tomorrow and embarrass me by acting jealous, I'm walking out." I said, "Okay." And I meant it because I didn't want to do some scene in a therapist's office. I wanted to fix whatever was real. The next morning, we loaded the kids into my car because I was dropping them at my mom's before counseling. My car has CarPlay and a hands-free setup. I use it for maps and calls. And at some point, I had turned on the feature that reads messages out loud when I'm driving. It's a setting that exists in CarPlay for announcing incoming texts. We were 10 minutes into the drive. The baby was half asleep. Our older kid was asking for a snack, and Talia was staring out the window like she was practicing for court. Her watch buzzed, and a second later, my car did that chime, the one that usually means a text. And then the system voice came on. "New message. Marley, I'm proud of you for sticking to the script. Remember, keep calling controlling. He'll either blow up or he'll shut down. Either way, it helps. After counseling, we'll go over the bank account stuff. Delete this. Also, Jace is asking if you're still coming by tonight." It read all of it, slowly, clearly, in that calm voice that makes everything sound normal. I didn't hit anything. My hand stayed on the wheel. I felt my face go hot and my stomach drop. And I looked at her and she was frozen, staring at the dashboard like she wanted to climb into it. My kid said, "Mom, who is Marley?" And I said, "It's a friend from work." And then I said, "Hey, buddy, can you help me count red cars?" And he got distracted. Talia reached over like she was going to rip the screen out of the dash. She hit buttons. The voice stopped. And for a few seconds, there was only the turn signal sound and the baby breathing. I said, "Who is Jace?" She said, "I don't know why your car is doing this. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You set things up to spy." I said, "My car is reading your messages because you're getting messages. Who is Jace?" She said, "He's nobody. It's a guy Marley is talking to. She sent me screenshots. It's a joke." I said, "The message said he's asking if you're still coming by tonight." She said nothing. I pulled into a gas station parking lot because my hands were shaking and I didn't trust myself to keep driving. I turned the car off. I said, "We're not going to counseling with the kids in the back while you pretend this is a joke. Tell me the truth." She started crying immediately, like full tears, and she said, "I knew you would do this. I knew you would trap me. You always have to be right." I said, "I don't care about being right. I care about my life. Are you seeing someone?" She wiped her face and said, "I've been talking to someone. It's not like that." I asked, "Have you met him?" She nodded once. I asked, "How many times?" She said, "A few." I asked, "Have you been to his place?" She nodded again. I didn't ask for more details because my kid was behind me and the baby started fussing, and I didn't want them hearing any of that. I said, "We're still dropping the kids off, then we're going to counseling, and you're going to tell the counselor exactly what that message was about." She said, "No, you're going to use this to make me look crazy." I said, "The message said stick to the script. That is not a misunderstanding. That is planning." She said, "Marley talks like that. She's dramatic." I didn't argue. I started the car and drove to my mom's. At my mom's house, Talia acted normal in front of her, kissed the kids, made small talk, said she'd pick them up later, like nothing happened. She didn't mention the gas station. She didn't mention the message being read out loud. She didn't even look at me. When we got back in the car, she said, "If you bring this up in counseling, I'll tell her you're emotionally abusive and you monitor me." And she said it like she had practiced a sentence. I drove us to counseling anyway. In the waiting room, she sat with perfect posture and scrolled her phone like she was bored. I sat there feeling like I was watching someone I didn't know play my wife. The therapist was a woman in her late 40s, calm voice, not pushy. She asked why we came in, and Talia launched into it immediately. She said, "I track her." She said, "I interrogate her." She said, "I don't let her have privacy." She said she feels like she's always being watched. She didn't say one word about the running group, the smartwatch, or the message. When it was my turn, I said on the way here, her smartwatch got a message that my car read out loud. And it was from someone telling her to stick to the script and keep calling me controlling. And it mentioned a man named Jace asking if she was coming by tonight. The therapist asked Talia if that was true. Talia stared at the floor and said, "I don't remember what it said." I said, "I do." And I repeated it as close as I could. The therapist asked, "Are you in a relationship with someone else?" Talia said, "I've been unhappy for a long time, and he listens to me." And then she started crying again, but it was different than the gas station crying. This one was for the therapist. The therapist asked if she wanted to work on the marriage or separate. Talia said, "I don't know. I came here to feel safe, not to be attacked." I said, "I came here to fix our marriage, and I'm finding out you coach yourself to paint me as controlling while you were meeting someone behind my back." The therapist kept trying to slow it down, but Talia kept circling back to control. She kept repeating the same phrases, monitor tone, walking on eggshells, and it sounded like the message again, stick to the script. Halfway through the session, the therapist asked about finances because she said conflict often shows up there, and Talia got stiff, and I realized the message also said go over the bank account stuff, and my brain finally caught up to that part. I asked what bank account stuff. Talia said, "Nothing. Marley was helping me budget." I said, "Show me your budgeting right now." She said no. The therapist asked if there were hidden accounts or debt, and Talia went quiet for a long time. Then she admitted she opened a credit card in her name only and had been putting things on it, and she said it like it was just groceries. I asked how much. She said, "I don't know." After counseling in the parking lot, she said, "Are you happy now? You got to humiliate me." I said, "I'm not doing this outside in public. Get in the car." On the drive home, she told me she was planning to move out and she wanted the kids most of the time because my schedule is too unpredictable. And she said she talked to Marley about what to say in counseling because she didn't want me to control the narrative. I asked who Marley is. She said Marley is a supervisor at her store and she's been through a divorce. And she said Marley told her to use the word controlling because therapists take it seriously. I asked who Jace is. She said he's a customer who started coming in all the time. He's separated and he made her feel wanted. I asked if she had taken our kids around him. She said no. Then she said, not really. Then she said, once at a park because she ran into him and it kept changing that night after the kids were asleep. I asked for full honesty and she said, "You're not entitled to every detail. That's controlling." I didn't yell. I didn't call her names. I said, "I'm going to protect myself and the kids," and I slept on the couch. The next morning I called in sick and did 3 things in order. I checked our joint account and saw 2 transfers I didn't recognize, both under $1,000, both sent to a payment app with a name that wasn't hers. I called the bank. They said the transfers were authorized from her phone. They couldn't reverse them without a dispute process. I called a family law attorney's office and asked for a consultation. By the time Talia got home for work that day, I had printed out the bank activity. I had made a list of dates she was running, and I had asked my mom if the kids could stay with her on short notice. I didn't shove papers in her face. I told her we needed to separate in the house while we figure out the next step, and I wanted the kids to stay with me until we had a custody schedule in writing. She said no. She said she was taking them to her sister's, and she walked toward the stairs. I stood in front of the stairs and said, "You're not leaving with them without an agreement," and I kept my voice even, and I didn't touch her. She pulled out her phone and said she was calling the police because I was blocking her. I stepped back and said, "Call them." She stared at me for a second, then put the phone down, and she said, "You're trying to scare me." I said, "You already tried to set me up as controlling and counseling. I'm not playing games." She left alone and came back later with her sister, grabbed clothes, and went to stay there. 2 days later, my attorney told me not to leave the house, not to block her from the kids, and not to argue over text. He told me to keep everything short, factual, and about schedules. Talia started texting long paragraphs about how I'm controlling, how I'm punishing her, how I'm using money to trap her, and how she's afraid of me. I replied with things like, "Pick up is 5:30, drop off is 8 o'clock, diapers are in the bag, please confirm." She kept trying to pull me into fights, and I didn't. A week after counseling, Marley showed up at my house while Talia was picking up the kids. She didn't come inside. She stood on the walkway like she owned the place, and she said, "You need to stop trying to control Talia," and she said it loud enough for the neighbors. I said, "This is not a conversation," and I went back inside. Talia texted later that night, saying I embarrassed her at counseling, and Marley was only trying to support her, and she said I was abusive for stonewalling Marley. My attorney filed for temporary orders, custody, and financial restraints, so neither of us could drain accounts or move money without disclosure. When the temporary hearing came up, Talia tried to make the case that I'm controlling and unsafe, but she had no police report, no documentation, nothing, and the judge kept asking for specifics, and she kept giving feelings. The credit card came up because she had to submit financial disclosures. It wasn't groceries, it was almost $12,000. A lot of it was restaurants, gas stations, hotel charges, and gift purchases that didn't come into our house. The judge ordered that the kids stay primarily with me during the week because my schedule was consistent and my mom was a stable backup, and gave her weekends and one weekday dinner visit, and told us to use a co-parenting app for communication. After that, the tone changed. Talia stopped calling me controlling in every message and started focusing on money. She wanted me to take on the credit card because she said she only did it because she was lonely and stressed. The divorce took 7 months. It was not dramatic in the way people think. It was mostly paperwork and waiting and short court appearances. The big stuff got decided early, and then it was just grinding through the details. She eventually admitted to her attorney that Marley helped her plan what to say in counseling. She said it was because she was scared she wouldn't be believed, and the therapist ended up refusing to continue sessions with us once separation was filed because the dynamic shifted into legal territory. Talia moved into an apartment with a roommate. She kept her job, she stopped running with the group, and she stopped seeing Jace. She told the court it ended, and I have no idea if that's true. I didn't have the energy to chase it once the kids were stable. The final agreement was that we share legal custody. I have primary physical custody. She has alternating weekends plus one overnight midweek. We split daycare and medical costs, and we each keep our own debts, including her credit card. The only direct thing I ever said to her about that day in the car, after everything was filed, was this. I said, "You picked a word and try to make it my name." She said, "I didn't think it would go like that." I said, "Neither did I." And that was it, because there wasn't anything else to say that mattered more than getting the kids fed and to bed on time. The part that still feels unreal is how a setting in my car turned the whole thing into a situation she couldn't rewrite in a room with a therapist. It wasn't proof of everything, but it was enough to stop me from doubting my own eyes and ears, and it forced the conversation into reality instead of buzzwords.